He said you might know put down fame.
Rock. Ain't shit Rock wouldn't do.
We about to be back up in the big way.
When and where?
Changing the game all over again.
This gonna pay, man.
Power is officially back. The week break is done, we've taken a couple of days off, but it's back to business for 3 big episodes. They've laid the foundation in terms of the storylines and plots. There's the famous question, Marvin's Italian problem, Rock versus Unique, Snaps and Pop, how do they position themselves? There's also Jukebox on Demon Time, and they have also been kinda poking Lou over the last couple of episodes. You can definitely sense the turn is coming. There's a lot of moving chess pieces, and I do expect things to definitely pick up some speed. We also know episode 8 in the World of Power is normally a big episode. Considering we've also just come off a week break, I'm expecting nothing less. A death or two, a big reveal, a twist, all of those scenarios are definitely on the cards. So, without further ado, let's dive into these exclusive images and run through a quick preview for Season 4, Episode 8, starting with the title and synopsis. Now, the title of Episode 408 is Street Struck, and the synopsis reads, Rock goes on the offensive while Marvin and Lou try to control the chaos. Jukebox joins Kanan on the hunt for OC. Meanwhile, Kanan digs deeper into what really happened with his best friend. Now, let's start with this conversation here between Kanan and Juke. We know what Kanan saw at the end of 407, and he is going to tell Juke he believes it's Rock. I know Kanan would mention the D-Wiz situation from back in Season 1, but I still feel it isn't enough to kind of convince me or convince Juke. Over the past few weeks, we've been running through a number of suspects. We've ruled out Marvin, Lou, Detective Howard, Ronnie, Unique, Kanan, and also Juke. So, who does it leave? It leaves Rock, Snaps and Pop, and also Detective Garcia. Or maybe potentially a new character completely. I personally don't believe it's Rock myself. And I do think, or at least hope, Juke and Kanan both realize before they go and do something stupid. I do think Jukebox will kind of think deeper. I'm sure just as the synopsis teases, she's going to tell Kanan, look, he needs to kind of look into this theory a bit more. I said it before in my previous investigations. He's looking at Rock paying these officers. Well, he saw the same thing with Snaps and Pop. And in fact, there is still also a scene with Snaps and Pop on the rooftop with 2 law enforcement officers we still haven't seen. So, in my eyes, they're also still suspects. I'm personally ruling Rock out. But of course, we can't be 100% sure based on history and based on what she's done before. So you really can't kind of blame Kanan for thinking Rock may have actually had a hand. But I'm sure they'll definitely give us some more pieces to this puzzle. But we've been through every single character in terms of motive, timeline, things that make sense, things that don't make sense. And the only people we have left on the board are Rock, Snaps, Pop, and Detective Garcia, who falls under the category of law enforcement. Let's see what we learn in 408. So coming away from the conversation about fame, let's talk about OC. Now we know Jukebox is going to be joining the hunt for OC, and I do think they will eventually find him dead or alive. But this situation here, I do believe this is either a brother or a relative of OC, because it does seem like we are going to be introduced to OC's mother. In regards to him putting his hands on Juke, I think he's about to find out real quick why you don't mess around with someone like Juke. Kanan is also in the same house or apartment. We don't know whether it's at the same time as Juke or maybe at a different point in the episode, who knows. But we've got people going crazy in my last comment section saying this is Breeze's apartment, but it definitely isn't. I have double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked. It definitely isn't Breeze's apartment. I personally believe it's OC's parents' house and where his mom's and brother probably live. But moving on to Juke and Rock. Now we don't know whether this is before Juke has this conversation with Kanan or after, but they're here packing up Joyce's clothes. I personally don't think we're going to see a funeral for Joyce. I think we're in probably for a time jump of a couple of weeks, but definitely looking forward to hearing this conversation in terms of the aftermath of Joyce's death, and also Juke potentially kind of probing Rock around fame. Now with law enforcement, we've got Garcia here with Juke. We know he's on the hunt for answers in terms of what happened to fame, even though I do think he is a suspect himself. But I'm sure he's probably here asking questions in terms of whether she knows anything about fame, what happened to Detective Howard, and everything that went down in 310. But this is the last person he's going to get anything from. Although I did raise the possibility of Jukebox feeding him the wrong information because she has done it before. Definitely want to keep an eye on. Now sticking with law enforcement, we've also got Detective Garcia coming face to face with Unique at his tailor shop, which is actually going to be the first time Unique's confronted by law enforcement since his return in 406. To law enforcement, even they thought he was dead. But I'm sure with the streets talking, Unique is back. Garcia's probably heard, and he's come to try and ruffle some feathers or even play between Unique and Rock. We have seen a very similar tactic from Detective Don Carter back in Go Season 4, playing between Tariq and Monet Tejada. And Captain Baptiste did mention He does want this case closed in the right manner. So, definitely in for an interesting conversation here, that's for sure. I do also stick by my thoughts in terms of Garcia being a real pest in these last few, because he has been relatively quiet since 402, but episode 8, 9, and 10, it definitely is time to start ramping up the pressure. Now, in terms of Unique Street operation, we are also going to see him in a meeting with Phil Russo, although in this image, he doesn't exactly look too pleased. Maybe Rock's actually hit back, maybe the Thomases have finally made their move, because they do have to. If they sit back and take the attack from Unique, they're going to have nothing left. So I do think Rock and Marvin may have potentially made their move. The question is, how, and what's the short-term and long-term impact for Unique in his position? There's definitely going to be a lot of back and forth from now until episode 10, until you get to the stage where there's only one winner. But, just like the Elder Kanan's narration said earlier on in season 4, in the grand scheme of things, are you really winning? Or are the real winners these guys, the mafia bosses, the guys who get the other people to fight their proxy wars for them? Now, speaking of proxy wars, we've also got Stefano in a meeting with Marvin, and Marvin really has a big problem on his hands. There's a really ugly situation with Ellie Tyler. He went and got rid of one of Stefano's guys, and I don't think Stefano's just going to forget. Like he said back in 404, if anything goes wrong, he's going to be looking in Marvin's direction. And he's definitely going to kind of want answers and want revenge. Marvin's issue is, he just seems to be covering up one lie with another, and I really do fear he is digging a hole that he won't be able to get out of with the Italians. Back in my breakdown for 407, I also questioned him not telling Rock the full truth when he had the chance at Joyce Thomas's house. And it is because he's probably thinking he can fix this shit himself, which in my opinion, I don't think he can. The whole situation is just a ticking time bomb, and I do expect things just to get even worse. I think the hole is going to get even bigger, which makes Marvin make more decisions, take more risks, which may even lead to more mistakes. Let's see what happens with this whole situation with Stefano, Marvin, Ellie Tyler, and also Rock, who Stefano wants to move out the way. Now, speaking of Rock, we've also got her in conversation with Crystal. We know Kanan had that conversation with her at the end of 407, and I do wonder if she is here to actually tell Rock, maybe let her know what Kanan's up to, not going behind Kanan's back as such, but because she's worried he's going to go and do something stupid. Crystal really does actually care for Kanan, so her being here, I think she's only going to have good intentions, which I actually do think Rock will appreciate. However, I still do stand by my earlier statement from season 4, for Kanan to really turn from a pup into a wolf, turn into that monster that we saw in Power, which I don't think he's done so just yet. We have seen Jukebox flip that switch, but with Kanan, I do think there is another level to go, but for that to happen, he needs to lose Crystal. Now over to Snaps, Pop, and their Pitbull. In terms of these two characters, I really do wonder what their next move is because they were approached by Rock back in 407, but also Unique. But their business is also with Kanan. With someone like Kanan, they can nurture him, mentor him, manipulate him if they wish to do so, which you can't do with the likes of Unique or Rock. In some ways, they can have a certain level of control over Kanan. I mentioned before, they're looking at Kanan like he can be a money-making machine. But in terms of the next move, let's see. They are still suspects on my investigation board, and there is also another scene which I'm not 100% sure if it will be in episode 8, it may potentially be in 8 or 9, but there is a scene of them on the rooftop with law enforcement officers, which does actually kind of make you think about them wanting control over Kanan. What lengths are they really willing to go to? Definitely something to watch. Their relationship with Kanan, what's their plan with Unique, and how are they seeing this war unfold around them in Queens? Now, last but not least, Lou getting back into the game, which is something I posted on X a while ago, because you can kind of just sense it. I created a breakdown last week, it was one of the hot topics after episode 407, because you can really sense they're building up to it. And I did mention last week a couple of scenarios that could potentially push him over the edge. Be-Rilla, the situation with Unique, finding out what happened to Fame, who was behind the murder, or potentially Imani Okoye being a CI, a confidential informant. All of those options are definitely still wide open when it comes to Lou Thomas. But that's a preview of all things episode 408 based on the exclusive images. An episode I'm really looking forward to. I do think it's going to be a big episode. I do think we're in for a death or two, maybe a twist or a reveal. I do think it is going to be a big episode which sets us up nicely for 9 and 10. But drop all your thoughts and predictions down below in the comment section, and I will see you guys as usual in my breakdown for episode 408. So, as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.